the NFL draft is in the book. So it is now Dynasty rookie draft season. And we're going to get you ready for your rookie drafts by doing a 2-round Superflex mock draft. So without further ado, let's throw it over to Big Dog Evan Silva. You get the 101 Superflex rookie draft. Who are you taking?
I'm going with Caleb Williams with very little hesitation. I understand, and I understand the argument from Marvin Harrison. I mean, he landed in a great spot. We can let the person who selects Marvin Harrison talk more about that. But I've also noticed that just looking around the industry at a number of different dynasty rankings, that some people do have Marvin Harrison as the number one overall. I think in the 2-quarterback Superflex format, Caleb Williams, though, being dropped into arguably the best offensive environment in terms of weapons, in terms of what I believe is an underrated offensive line under Shane Waldron, with his athletic ability, with his prolific college resume, age, all that, checks almost every box for a number one overall pick in a super flex format. So to me, this was an easy one.
Yeah, Amico and I actually did a podcast on Established Judge about a week ago on if you could make the argument for Marvin Harrison 101 in Superflex. And like, I guess if you're flush at quarterback, we decided like it's acceptable, but any other circumstance, the quarterbacks just hold their trade value so much year over year. But I will take Marvin Harrison Jr. I think this is a tier 1 Caleb and Marvin Harrison Jr. Not a ton to add. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. was consensus top prospect. Excellent landing spot where you've got capable quarterback play, ton of targets to be had his way. He goes off the board to me at number 2, and then it starts to get more interesting with the 3rd pick over to Amico.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is honestly just as clear as the first 2 picks because I think that Malik Nabers is closer to Marvin Harrison than he is to like the rest of the field, regardless of position. Like if you look at a lot of the pre-draft stuff, it seemed that there were quite a few teams that had Nabers above Marvin Harrison Jr. Certainly from our perspective, Harrison is the cleaner prospect, but Nabers is still an explosive player. I think for us, I think he's like our wide receiver 5 or wide receiver 6 right now in the overall dynasty ranks. Like, Nabers is a tier 1 guy for us. So I think I can understand the argument here if you're super quarterback needy to go with one of the other quarterbacks that were drafted in the top portion of the draft. But for me, Nabers, is a cornerstone receiving piece, if you're a dynasty team.
And then it goes to me. And I am not building a team, right? So the fact that I drafted Caleb Williams number 1 overall, it doesn't matter.
Correct. You are just taking the best pick at this spot.
So I think it starts to get a little bit interesting here. I listened to Amico with JJ before the draft, and I believe that Amico was making it. Well, I know that Amico liked Drake May, at least at that point, better than Jaden Daniels. I'm going to go with Jaden Daniels because of the dual threat capability, because I feel very confident that he's going to jump in and be a starter with fantasy value from the get-go, led the NCAA in both yards per pass attempt and yards per rushing attempt. I'm not sure that's ever been done before in college football. I know that there are some things. He's a 5-year player, I believe. He wasn't that great at Arizona State. He was surrounded by big-time weapons at LSU, a great supporting cast. But I think that dual threat capability, and Drake May has some, but Jaden Daniels is more explosive in that capacity. I'm going with him here.
Yeah, I would have taken Daniels at 4 as well due to the rushing upside and just immediate fantasy ceiling being better than May's. I know Amico, I believe, has, in his very personal ranks, May higher than Daniels. So I'll take Drake May here and then let Amico talk a bit more about that, because it's somewhat interesting because last year I was on like Bryce Young, maybe like versus Anthony Richardson. I thought maybe it was closer than Amico had it. And Amico was like, no, it's Anthony Richardson. And he's looking pretty sharp on that one. So I'm interested to see him. I guess it's not a direct comparison, but like Jaden is closer to the higher risk, higher reward play that we thought A-Rich was last season.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, The difference between like a Richardson and a Daniels is number one, the age. Like Richardson was a 3-year player versus Daniels 5, and Richardson is way bigger. Now you look at his first season. Richardson got hurt like 3 times in the first 4 games. He missed most of the season. So I do have some questions as to whether or not Jaden Daniels can actually be an effective runner and stay healthy. He took a lot of really rough shots, I thought, at LSU. Didn't miss time for them, which is good, but I think that over time in the NFL that could become a problem. And I guess at this stage in dynasty rookie drafts, like I'm still trying my best to get the best prospect because I'm not really drafting this quarterback for the immediate value. Like obviously the rushing for Daniels is super valuable, but when I project this thing 5-10 years out, like May just has a lot less holes in the prospect profile. He's one of very few players to have 1,000 pass attempts with an ADOT over 10 and pressure to sack rate under 20%. Like he is exceptional. So, I know that there were some questions, I guess, in the pre-draft process about some of the layups and stuff that he misses, but I just trust him overall to be the better quarterback. And I think when we're kind of splitting hairs at the top, that still matters to me. So that's why I personally prefer Drake, but I know that the market and a lot of us, the ETR consensus would be to go Jade.
Yeah, I believe may actually slip in some of these drafts. People are kind of like really scared of the landing spot and whatnot. So there's a chance you can get him at 5 or later. So decent trade down equity, depending what you need in the first round. So Amico, I'm guessing with pick 6, you are going with the 4th quarterback off the board, though.
Well, I mean, I'm going with the 5th quarterback off the board actually because JJ McCarthy.
Or the 5th real life quarterback.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. 4th in this draft. Gotcha. JJ McCarthy has just grown on me a lot. I think throughout the process, like obviously he tested well athletically. I think this is a similar deal with May where it's like he's going to provide some value rushing, even if it's not that high level top tier rushing. And McCarthy, while he didn't have tremendous volume in college, was very efficient. All of his like peripheral statistics are very good. And I struggle a little bit with this, but it's like if you're looking at he has such a high percentage of his attempts being in like 3rd and 7 and longer type situations because Michigan was like run, and then we'll throw if we have to. He's kind of passing into these like pure passing situations, and his efficiency numbers are still very good. So I take that as a bullish point. And then really the biggest thing here for me with McCarthy, put the evaluation aside, like if it wasn't for Caleb going to the Bears, we'd be talking so much more about this situation. Like Justin Jefferson, obviously probably the best receiver in football, if not top 3. Addison was excellent last year. Hawkinson will be back from the injury. They have great coaching. Kevin O'Connell, I think, is clearly a play caller who elevates the quarterback position. So again, like
indoors,
right? Playing indoors. So I just feel very good that McCarthy has, if he is a talented player, will have the best chance to pay that off.
All right, so through 6 picks, 4 quarterbacks off the board. It started with Silva going Caleb Williams, then Marvin Harrison, then Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, JJ McCarthy. Silva back on the board for the 7th pick in this Superflex rookie draft.
So, and I believe that there might be a teardrop after this pick, unless you are in tight end premium. But we are not doing tight end premium. So I'm going to take Rome Odunze real confidently here at number 7. Has nothing to do with me taking Caleb Williams up top, although that would be nice to be able to pair them together. But Rome Odunze, I think, we saw it. We entered the draft thinking that there were, the big 3 receivers in this draft, and then there was a teardrop to the next, to the 4, 5, and 6, and the NFL agreed with that based on landing spot. Keenan Allen is, going to be a target, obstacle in 2024, but I think he's probably only there for 1 year. And then the target competition becomes DJ Moore, who's an absolute stud. But I think that Caleb Williams is going to be able to fill it up enough to support two at least fringe wide receiver ones. And Rome Odunze, to me, profiles as a legit wide receiver one in the NFL from both a fantasy and a real life standpoint. I think it's a really, really easy pick here. I get a top 10 overall pick with an awesome profile going to a quarterback that I believe in long term.
Yeah, total agreement with Silva there. As Silva said, if this was tight end premium, you'd also have Brock Bowers as a decision point there. But with it just super flex, non-tight end premium, tier drop off after the top 7. And this next tier for me, like I think I've got 3 guys that I'm thinking of between Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas Jr., and then still Brock Bowers. And it's really difficult for me to decide between the 3. I will point to an article that I did recently looking at the past 4 seasons of rookie drafts that this next tier is probably a lot closer to the back end of the first round draft than to these first 7 picks than it feels. If you just look at historically hit rates, I would draw like a pretty big line. So I think moving in the top 7 is pretty big. I think I'm going to go with Brian Thomas Jr. here. Very close between the 3. Near coin flip for me, but ultimately, he had a better capital than Worthy. I think he was a better prospect than Worthy. And I think his landing spot low key is better than Worthy's. I know playing with Mahomes in a pass heavy offense is really appealing to a lot of people, but I think playing with Trevor Lawrence, who had a tough but very unlucky season last year, and not having, too much target competition. You've got Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk built in there. But as far as secondary wide receivers, Gabe Davis hasn't earned a lot of targets. They've released Zay Jones, so should be plenty of immediate opportunity for Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the Thomas thing, like I was thinking about this today, like this is a classic spot where we initially might look at the depth chart and be like, oh, like it's going to be kind of tough, but we don't consider enough that like Brian Thomas might just be the best guy in the room. And like if that happens, like the payoff is still pretty large. So I like that take, Leone. I'm going to go with Bowers. I mean, I know it's not tight end premium. I think that even in the non-premium formats, those tight ends at the very, very top, if you're like, 12-team league or deeper, like those players are still going to be separators at the position, because the tight end position overall does not have a ton of elite fantasy producers. I think that Bowers can step in right away and do that. I mean, this is a player who, obviously was an excellent receiver, also had some awesome rushing numbers, like probably the best I've seen from a tight end. Just shows, number one, how athletic he is, that he's able to produce in that way, but also how important it was for Georgia to get him the football consistently. I think that Bowers immediately steps in as the second leading target getter on this team behind Devontae Adams. I know that the quarterback situation is not great, but Gardner Minshew is not like a stone zero. Like he's at least done some things before. He was decent last year. And yeah, like down the line, you'd like to see them get this quarterback situation figured out. But Bowers is not the kind of player, at least in my opinion, that relies on high-level quarterback play, because he's attacking the short area. He's going to be a quarterback's best friend, I think, kind of regardless. So I'm not as worried about the quarterback spot as I would be for someone who gets their targets deeper down the field. And Bowers is still a stone stud, so I'm going to take him here.
I'm going to go right to Xavier Worthy then. The Chiefs traded up to get him in the first round. I know he's 165 pounds, and that bothers me a little bit. Obviously, his ability to get off press covers. The Chiefs also use motion at the highest rate in the NFL. That'll help him get off of press coverage. I think the better comparison for him when he aligns outside than Tyreek Hill is actually Deshaun Jackson, who Andy Reid obviously coached in Philadelphia. Andy Reid just got a contract extension. Patrick Mahomes is going to be there forever. Travis Kelce just got a contract extension, but he's going to be 35. Marquise Brown is not necessarily there long term, and Rashee Rice has already gotten in trouble with the long arm of the law. So we're going to go with Xavier Worthy, 4.21 speed burner, pairing him up with Patrick Mahomes in KC.
Yeah, and likely a tier drop off after those three. I am back on the clock. I think we're starting to reach a point where if you could get multiple picks in the second round for something back in the first round, it makes sense to not be overconfident here. I do get to make a homer pick here in Keon Coleman, who, before the draft, I didn't really want the Bills to land with this guy, but they traded down twice, gave him good capital, and I'm a bit more excited about him. His 40 time wasn't great, but a lot of his speed stuff on like actual routes and the gauntlet, that everyone talks about since Puka smashed it last year. I believe Keon Coleman had the best gauntlet time this season. So, and it's like, for me, just a spot not to overthink it, right? It's a guy with very good draft capital who gets to play with a very good quarterback on a team that has such an obvious need at wide receiver. And I've seen some people who don't like Coleman as a prospect have him a few spots lower than this. It's hard to have him go much earlier than this. But ultimately, I almost think I hate to say an easy pick, but for me, I think it's the clear pick here, even though the market may see, more uncertainty. The uncertainty to me more is just if you could trade down and get some, but if you're making the pick, I like Coleman.
Yeah, I mean, like how frequently is this pick not going to return value for you? Like even if he doesn't look amazing, he's still going to be getting targets. So it's like, I don't know. I guess it's hard for me to see a situation where like we're sitting here next year being like, man, I can't trade this Keon Coleman guy. Like
Yeah.
It feels likely that he'll retain some kind of value. I'm going, I guess, a little bit off the board. I mean, this is from our ranks, but I think the market disagrees with us pretty strongly here. I'm going AD Mitchell. I think that in the pre-draft process, Mitchell was someone that we had a little higher just because of his height, weight, speed metrics. This is someone that I think has excellent upside. Now, he lands again indoors, which I think is going to be really good for him. If you saw any of the post-draft stuff from Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard, like they are not worried about this dude. I know that he maybe fell in the draft due to some, lingering character concerns, quote unquote, but they are not worried about this dude. They wanted him. They understand that he is a big freak athlete. And when I look at the way that this roster is kind of being constructed around Anthony Richardson, I think that this is a spot where this pick could portend that they long-term decide to throw the ball a little bit more. I think that early on, it's easy to lean on Richardson's legs. Shane Steichen went through this exact same development with Jalen Hurts, where they were very run heavy early on. I'm sure they'll still do that, for a large part of this season as Richardson develops. But the big picture is going to be, throw to get the lead and then run to win. And that's, I think, a big mantra there. And if that pass volume comes up, I think that this situation probably looks a little bit better than people would think so on the outside. So I'm going to take the upside here, the upside shot, I think, with Mitchell. And, from a rookie draft standpoint, I kind of feel like this is the spot because you're not paying the premium. Like I think a guy like Mitchell in the past maybe goes a few spots higher.
So Amico takes Mitchell with the last pick of the first round. We're now on to round 2. First pick of the second round goes to Silva.
I'm going with Jonathan Brooks right here. And the NFL told us that they, or at least the Panthers, consider him to be like the pretty clear-cut best running back in this draft based on where they selected him and based on the fact that he's coming off a November 11th ACL. Rap Sheet reported that Jonathan Brooks is expected to be ready for training camp. I am not worried in the slightest about Miles Sanders, who I think could be moved before the start of the season even, or Chuba Hubbard. So landing in a spot where he should get very, very, not necessarily immediately, but very, very soon, he will get opportunity. And I think that the situation might be a little bit better than people think. I mean, first of all, it can't be worse than last year. Dave Canales has shown a little bit of a magic wand when it comes to offenses, Tampa Bay and Seattle. And then they poured a ton of resources into their offensive line. Recently, they signed Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis, the guards, to massive, and these are space-eating guards, to massive contracts. They signed Austin Corbett. Ike Ekwonu was a first-round pick last year, and Taylor Moton is actually one of the best right tackles in the league. So I think that the environment that they're dropping Jonathan Brooks into is actually maybe much better than common perception.
Yeah, I'm with you on Brooks. I like that. He's my top running back as well. This pick for me, second pick of the second round, between a few guys, I'm going to go with Ladd McConkey for the Chargers. Good draft capital at the beginning of the second round. Really strange analytical profile. His yards per route run is off the charts good, but his yards per team pass attempt isn't that great because he didn't run a whole ton of routes. And it's this weird thing, and it creates a lot of uncertainty. So I think it's a high risk, high reward thing. We also, heard some lingering stuff about, potential medicals not being the cleanest for Ladd. I can't speak to specifics there, but it does, again, lend itself towards high risk, high reward. But similar to Keon Coleman, it's just the combination of capital and landing spot, are too good for me to overlook. The Chargers have an obvious need at wide receiver. They pretty much just have Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnston, and Johnston was a bust last season. They went strong at OL with all at 5. I think they'll be able to protect Herbert, give him time, and you're playing with a really good quarterback. So Ladd for me in this spot.
All right, cool. I'm going Malachi.
Penix to you. Penix to you, Amico. Penix to you, I said.
No.
No.
I don't know if we'll see him today.
This is Amico's. Amico's been waiting a full 24 hours to talk about this next pick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going Malachi Corley. I think that this is something in our ranks that I feel like I have to defend a little bit. So I am glad that I kind of get to talk about him. Like, the thing with Malachi Corley, I think, as a prospect, right? He was the entire offense at Western Kentucky. He did experience, some decent quarterback play. Like, they had Bailey Zappi for a year. I forget the guy's name the last couple of years, but he was like decent. But the thing with Corley is that he has this versatile production. He's drawn Deebo Samuel comps from, not just the scouts like Lance Zierlein, but also from our statistical projections, the stuff that we use to compare players as prospects. Deebo was the top comp for Corley. So I like having that marriage there. If you just look at players who have gone, over 200 catches with 10 rushing attempts and scored a lot of touchdowns in their careers, like, the list of players that you see are all guys who are like significantly lighter. Like, they're all like under 200, and Corley is 215 pounds. So I'm looking at this pick and this landing spot with the Jets as Corley being like a supercharged or bull type Randall Cobb option in this offense. And I see that going extremely well. I mean, Aaron Rodgers really needs that second receiver. I'm not sure that we can trust Mike Williams to stay healthy. The tight ends, I think, Jeremy Ruckert and company are coming along, but they're not proven. So Corley could step in right away and see immediate volume. Obviously, he's going to get some of the gadget stuff probably too. I just think that the Dynasty community at large is kind of sleeping on this pick. I think that even with a third round draft capital, he's someone who's going to come in and make a pretty big impact right away.
And he gets to play with our future vice president. I am crushing this draft, and I'm going to continue to do that. I'm winning. You guys know I'm winning, right? I'm going to take Ricky Pearsall. Now, I'm a little bit biased right here because I already got Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. So I feel like I don't need any more quarterbacks, and Bo Nix should be considered here. But I'm taking Ricky Pearsall. It's a little bit scary right now that they have not moved Deebo Samuel, and that it sounds like they're making amends with Brandon Ayuk. So I don't know what kind of a year one production I'm going to get out of Ricky Pearsall right now, but he was a first round pick to Kyle Shanahan. Perfect system fit, I believe. Big time athlete. It seems like when you like CJ Stroud, who put on an absolute show during his live draft stream with actually our boy Mike Renner and Micah Parsons. He loved Ricky Pearsall. Brandon Ayuk apparently was texting 49ers like John Lynch, like, yo, great pick. Like, it seems like the players just love Ricky Pearsall, and he didn't have the greatest college production profile, but he's really good in the return game. 99th percentile athlete. Awesome run after the catch. This is what Kyle Shanahan is looking for. I think that he will be an asset sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and you kind of trust Shanny to figure out how to use these guys. It's also like the writing's on the wall, even if it doesn't happen this offseason, but the 49ers cannot hold on to Debo and Brandon Ayuk long term. And that's going to result in, even though you might not get the immediate production from Pierce Hall, some of these other guys, first round draft capital, I like that pick. I would say everyone from for me at least, from the last pick of the first round to these next two picks is still close to the same tier. So again, if you can trade down, I think that makes sense. Even here, I'm between Trey Benson and Bo Nix, but I'm going to take the quarterback that has a super clear path to starting, was taken 12th overall, I believe 12th overall. And yeah, I'm not the biggest Bo Nix fan, but in these Superflex rookie drafts, to be able to get a pretty clear starting quarterback in the middle of the second round doesn't happen very frequently.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably going to start right away, right? I mean,
you would if he
doesn't, maybe Stidham. I mean, he'd have to bomb in the preseason and training camp.
I kind of feel like Sean Payton is stamping this, this is my guy, and
he's all in.
I have to say,
he even traded up for his receiver from college.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
I have to say, I actually thought that his commentary after the draft was pretty interesting. He was kind of telling you what he was looking at that he liked about Bo Nix. And I mean, he does make some compelling points. He's well, he's first in this category, he's first in that category, he's first in this category. I'm like, damn, all right, this Bo Nix guy's pretty good. Yeah, so I'm definitely good with that. Nix is definitely someone that I could see coming up on our ranks in the next update or two, just because he's a quarterback, he's going to play right away. He's been an effective scrambler.
If you need a quarterback,
I don't want to sleep on him.
You can take him as early as 12, right?
Absolutely, 100%. I'll go with the other option that you were considering, Leone, which is Trey Benson. Probably a pass catching back out of the gate. I mean, he's really, I would say, in redraft going to be one of the more intriguing zero RB options, because he's going to catch passes right away. He has the size to be a workhorse back, and James Conner is not really someone that we would say has a tendency to stay healthy. So I think Benson has a lot of paths to scoring points in year one. Obviously, after this season, Conner could just be gone, and that would leave Benson to be the main running back. So, I think that if we're trying to draft running backs in Dynasty, we want to get those points early. I think that Benson, especially as a mid-second round rookie pick, has the opportunity to return some decent value. He's going to be someone that you can play and get some points from, even if it isn't major production without an injury.
Okay, we're done through halfway of the second round. Pick 7, round 2 goes to Silva.
With Trey Benson, you're also throwing a potentially high upside dart in. I think too, in a situation that the arrow is pointing up on the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Another team with the arrow is pointing up is the Packers. And I really liked Marshawn Lloyd before the draft. I think Geno Jeremiah had someone good had Marshawn Lloyd as their favorite running back in the draft.
DJ,
220 pounds, was a DJ. There you go. 220 pounds, 4'4", 640, can absolutely play in the passing game. Goes to this landing spot where, look, Josh Jacobs on paper was a 4-year, $40 million contract. It's a year-by-year, 1-year deal. And I just love trying to invest in this offense. This is a really difficult pick for me to make. Though there were some interesting, I think Jalen Wright would be interesting here. I think that Jermaine Burton gives you a bunch of upside here. But I'm going with Marshawn Lloyd in a difficult spot. Betting on a player that I believe in, and in a situation that I definitely believe in.
Okay, 8th pick for me in the second round, and I think I'm gonna go with Xavier Leggett here, and it's JJ Zachariason, friend of the ETR at lateround.com, and his prospect guide. He just comes right out and says Xavier Leggett has the strangest production profile you'll find from a wide receiver prospect. This guy did absolutely nothing for several years at South Carolina, and then he puts up 3.05 yards per team pass attempt, which is one of, just 8 wide receivers that JJ notes hit that threshold of these prospects. He's a little bit of an older prospect. So, another boom bust guy, but he does walk into a pretty good situation. It seemed like Carolina really targeted him and got the guy they wanted. Not that that means much. Everybody gets the guy they wanted. But there is, immediately it looks like there's a lot of targets that are going to Deontay Johnson, who they got, Thielen, some of these guys that rack up targets. But overall, it's an aging sort of wide receiver group in front of him, giving him some upside in future years.
Silva's going to love this. I'm going to take Michael Penix. I mean, I think that this is kind of the time. We're in like the latter stages of round 2. Penix was still a first-round quarterback with top 10 draft capital. I think the thing that is tricky with Penix, and I think that he's going to have probably the widest range of outcomes in terms of draft position and rookie drafts, is like we shouldn't really see him this year, right? Like Kirk Cousins, I think, after signing the big contract, should at least get through this season. Now, there is some potential here that Penix looks so awesome that...
Look at you talking yourself into Michael Penix.
Well, listen, I mean, we got to do the listeners a service here, Like, there is a chance that Penix looks good in the preseason, that he looks good in practice, and the team does kind of go to him in 2025. So it's not... I don't think it's the most likely outcome, but I don't want to just completely discourage or discount the fact that he could be on the field before 2026, because I think that that's kind of like the median that everyone's looking at. There is some potential he's on the field earlier than that. Now, the other part of Penix's value that I think is interesting is like if you're a rebuilding team, like I have a couple teams that I'm kind of rebuilding from the ground up, I'm probably going to take Penix a little earlier just because it locks me in a quarterback with top 10 draft capital later than I probably would in a normal rookie draft. Like if Penix was going to be the day one starter, he'd be going in the first round. So you get that at a little bit of a value. If you're rebuilding, you're not really that interested in winning anyway. So if he's not playing, that kind of helps you get a better draft pick this year. So I think that there are some interesting cases to be made for Penix as a super flex pick, even just disregarding the profile or the evaluation or whatever you may think of him as a prospect.
All right. It goes to me, and I'm going to Jalen Wright, running back, Miami Dolphins. Just a super explosive player. He run 4.28?
4.38, I think.
4.38. So sub 4.40. He's got plenty of size. He can play in the passing game. He's got like these kind of like glaring, like kind of red flags. He was not good with ball security. He was not good with pass protection. And he never even saw 150 carries in a season at Tennessee. And it's not because he was hurt or anything. He played 13 games in 2022 and 12 games this past year. When we had Mike Renner on, he talked about just maybe not the most trustworthy player, but the Dolphins really wanted this dude. They traded a 2025 third-round pick to draft Jalen Wright in the middle of the 4th. I don't care that Jalen Wright does not – actually, in this scenario, in this landing spot, I do not care that Jalen Wright does not project as like a big-time workhorse. I don't even expect him to be. We've seen Devon Achane. We've seen Raheem Mostert. We've seen Jeff Wilson. We've seen even guys like Salvan Ahmed have bouts of success, as committee back, like clear-cut committee backs under Mike McDaniel. Jalen Wright is a perfect fit for Mike McDaniel. And so I think that I'm going to actually I have a real chance to get like flex usefulness and maybe RB2 usefulness from Jalen Wright as soon as 2025, really. Or 2024, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Wright is definitely one of the players that I have like a really wide range on where I might select him. I'm having a tough time pinning it down. You just saw the upside last year with Achane of what they can do with some of these athletes. It's just a question mark of the opportunity. Going back to the Penix pick real quick too, this 2-3 turn was around where you could get Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts a few seasons ago. And if you were patient and had those guys, getting a not just viable, but like top half fantasy quarterback at the 2-3 turn, like supercharges your team in Superflex. Like what it does for your team, it's hard to understate if it works out. Obviously, the odds of it working out are a little bit against it. I'm going to go with Jalen Polk here with the 11th pick of the second round. At this point of the receivers available, he has the best draft capital. He goes to a spot where targets should be a non-issue. He doesn't have the cleanest profile, but I do think we need to account for the fact that he had some pretty good teammates for him at Washington, in McMillan, in Rome Odunze. And when you account for that stuff, he starts to look a little bit better.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to stump here for another one of my guys to round the draft out. I'm taking Luke McCaffrey. I love this dude. I mean, I think that McCaffrey's profile is super interesting. High school quarterback, college quarterback, and then in year 4, he makes the transition over to wide receiver at Rice. Immediately has a 28% dominator rating, like just steps in and makes that change cleaner than I think any prospect that we've seen over the last 10 or 20 years, making the quarterback to receiver swap. I mean, we've seen guys like Braxton Miller try it. Other Logan Thomas became a tight end. Like we've seen guys kind of transition to other positions, but McCaffrey immediately was a target hog, was someone who was productive. He improved on those numbers in 2023 as a receiver, and then excelled at the Senior Bowl. So when I look at Luke McCaffrey, I'm thinking of him, even though he's an older player, I'm looking at him as still a young receiver. He is early in his development there. I think that he has a ton of developmental upside, and he goes to a wide receiver room where he's going to play right away. I mean, he is absolutely, I would say, the day one slot for Washington. He gets to play with a young quarterback in Jaden Daniels, where like obviously you're kind of tied to him, where if Daniels ends up being good, McCaffrey has a good chance to be good. Jahan Dotson has been fine, but not excellent in his first 2 years in the league. Terry McLaurin is getting up there in age, and neither of those players really have been committed to fully by the new regime with Adam Peters, the new ownership group with Harris. So, there's definitely a chance here that McCaffrey comes in and ends up kind of being the guy, not necessarily in year 1, but long term. So I really like this. I mean, he managed to get that day 2 draft capital. I know it's with the last pick of the 3rd round, but he's in, and that's significant. The hit rate on guys who make it into day 2 is way higher than what you would get with that day 3 draft capital. So I'm pretty pumped about this one, actually.
So that concludes the 2-round Superflex mock draft. We'll spend just a few minutes here. I'm going to give everybody a chance to talk about one guy that maybe they stand for, not necessarily who they would take next, but they like later in rookie drafts. Before we do that, Silva, thoughts on Troy Franklin not getting drafted? I think that will be the biggest surprise of players that didn't get drafted in our mock draft in the first 2 rounds.
I mean, the scouts that I know, like actual scouts that are in the NFL, not ones that got fired, like they think he sucks. So
hell yeah,
they were not surprised. They were not surprised by that. Yeah.
There you have it. I think a lot of people in the market are going to tie too heavily to, his analytical profile checks like a ton of boxes in terms of, early production, 3-year player, early declare, pretty steady college production throughout. But you have to respect what the NFL thinks of them. We're not smarter than 32 teams. So I think you could make justification for him at the end of round 2, at the early round 3, but a lot of people I think are going to tie Franklin even earlier than that, just because of where people thought of him pre-draft. Amico, one guy that
I want to say one more thing about it. It reminds me of the year where like a lot of people liked Hakeem Butler, myself included. Greg Cosell liked him, Matt Waldman liked him, a bunch of pretty good analysts liked him, and he falls to the 4th round, and then you're just like, well, you got to defer to the NFL in this sense. Now he's tearing it up for the St. Louis Battlehawks, though. just wanted to give out a shout out there to Hakeem Butler, but it's a similar kind of situation.
All right, Amico, one guy that we did not take that you like. I mean, it could be even a 4th round rookie pick, just someone that you're higher than the market on.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many guys I think in this class that are super, super interesting. I'll mention Tyrone Tracy here because I don't know if he's someone that we've mentioned in content before. Running back prospect for the Giants. I think this is a pretty interesting backfield. I mean, Devin Singletary was fine last year. You know, he was the most productive running back for the Texans, but they were clearly content to let him go. The Giants signed him for a pretty cheap deal after letting Saquon Barkley go to the Eagles. So, I mean, he obviously projects as their day one starter. But Tracy this is like one of our favorite running back tropes, I feel like, you know, like former receiver turned running back. I would assume he's going to be their pass catching back kind of out of the gate. I mean, that is not an area where Singletary necessarily thrives. And Tracy's a very good athlete. So I think that this is one of those spots, again, somewhat similar to the Benson situation, but with less draft capital and the offense not really being quite as good. But this is someone that I think, you know, maybe year 2, year 3, we look at and we say, wow, like, you know, this guy is getting 200 carries and 50 catches in a season. You know, what a value.
I'll go with my extra player, Ben Sinnott from the Commanders, the 2nd tight end off the board. Really interesting journey for him. I know in a lot of spots, he wasn't even really ranked in Dynasty ranks prior to the NFL draft, or at least early in April. But I know Tez Seth of Sumer Sports tweeted out the beginning of April kind of an interesting note on Sinnott, looking at his college production. You know, he was the TE2 in target share, yards per route run, a lot of metrics, and then his athleticism is good too. He did really well in the jumping drills and the 3-cone. If this was tight end premium, he would have gone for sure in our mock draft. I think even early to mid 2nd round in Superflex tight end premium drafts is a good spot to target him. We'll throw it to Silva, the final word.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys saw Ben Sinnott when he got the call from Adam Peters, but he had babes to each side of him. Like, he's got 2 super hot girlfriends, and they were all able to come together for the draft, all 3 of them. I don't know if they got that 3 thing, you know, but they that was nice to see them all together in one place. I like 2 guys actually here. Jermaine Burton, who I think went to a great landing spot, big time character concerns, but, you know, arguably like a 1st round talent. Went to Cincinnati, and there's a lot of opportunity there with T. Higgins on the franchise tag and Tyler Boyd not coming back, and then Kamani Vidal. So I didn't really know almost anything about Kamani Vidal out of Troy before the draft, and I've had to kind of, you know, I haven't even seen him play yet, but I've read like his profile and read about him, and obviously his landing spot with the Chargers is very intriguing because they don't have anybody there that is like, I think, J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Like, these guys are very replacement level types at this point. Kamani Vidal went in the 6th round, okay? So it's hard to have any level of confidence in him, but he's really compactly built, 5'8", 215. He was an early breakout at Troy. He had almost 800 total yards as a true freshman at Troy, and then he was prolific this past year, 4.4, 640 at 215. You know, pretty good athletic metrics. And Jim Harbaugh has come out and said, look, this is going to be a wide open competition in this backfield. We're a team that is going to run the ball a lot. So Kamani Vidal, 6th round pick, Chargers.
Love it. There you have it. Thanks, everybody, for watching us here on the Established Run YouTube channel. This has been the 2-round Superflex mock draft. For more Dynasty content, make sure you check out Established the Run. And Miko's got all of our Dynasty rankings up there for 1 quarterback and 2 quarterback leagues. We also have a trade calculator that balances, you know, how we feel about the players with how the market does, to help you find some good trades throughout your rookie drafts. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.